Hey man, I really appreciate you taking the time to press play and at least listen to some of my opinion on the 2020 TE250i, which is the TPI. I have had this bike now for 20 hours of riding, roughly about 3-4 months of ownership. I ride relatively aggressive, but I'm not extremely competitive anymore, but I still maintain a pretty good pace. But I've had a few guys ask me in some of my ride videos what I've done to kind of tame down the hit of the 250, and I haven't really done much, and I don't really feel this the TE250i has a heavy hit like the YZ250 of the days when we used to throw flywheel weights on and stuff like that. I've done nothing to this motor, and I have no reason to believe that a guy would need to, unless you're ultra competitive and you want a lot out of it. This bike has a real smooth hit, in my opinion. I do run it on map 1, and map 2 for me seems to be a high rev. Map 1 seems to be kind of a lower rev and a little bit more traction. It's just my opinion. I think some guys have said that the Europe, some of the ones that are released in Europe, it's the opposite direction. 1 being the rev and 2 being traction. But my experience has been map 1 is for traction. 1 is for traction and 2 is for kind of a high rev. Let's see, some of the mods that I have done to the bike that have kind of brought the bike to a great trail bike, in my opinion, and I do some extreme trail with my son, and I'll do a little bit of desert and so forth. But I did put a 52 tooth rear sprocket on this, and that brought this bike a little bit tighter ratio, and I really dig the first gear for extreme stuff. We get into some washes, and we'll try to do some waterfalls and things like that. And I wouldn't say we're big extreme enduro guys, but we've been riding all our lives, and so we'll try just about anything. So the 52 tooth does work really well for me. And the other thing that I did, the other mod that I did was I did a Fastway spark arrestor. They're certainly required here in Arizona, in our mountains. And I live and ride in the Flagstaff area, so that alone brought the revs down a little, and I felt a lot more bass and a little bottom end out of the bike when I had done that. It actually feels, just with that change and the 52 tooth sprocket, felt like my 2018 300. I had a KTM 300, and it had a lot of bottom end. I really enjoyed the bottom end of that bike, but that 300, I couldn't just pick up that front end riding the way I ride. I ride a gear up. I really bog my bike and run it down pretty good. So that really brought it down. I really like that mod. The other mod that I did is I put a throttle tamer on this bike, and this is the 400. I think they make a 100, a 200, and a 400 that I know of. But I put the 400s on all my bikes. My XCW 300, I didn't. I put a 200 throttle tamer on that bike. The 400 seemed to stretch out that 300 just a little bit more than I liked, and so I go with the 400 on the TE250. We haven't done the throttle on the XCW 250. My son races, and that's a 2020 as well. So we have not put that throttle tamer on that. He loves the hit of that 250, and being an XCW, it's not a supercross bike, so it's not an XX where it's really hitting hard. We've done nothing to the power valves. There's been guys that say, hey, back it out 1.5 turns, and we will like it even better. I haven't tried it yet. I just haven't really had a reason. I ride this bike relatively stock. I've adjusted my suspension and my sag the way I like it. I'm an A-level rider, and so if I were really competitive and trying to go out and be ultra competitive, I'd probably make more adjustments, and I'd probably go ahead and have the suspension done. But for me, I just haven't found a need for it. So those are the only mods that I've made. I do put mooses in my moose bib inserts. We get a lot of sharp rock here in Arizona, and you know, I don't want any flats. And so in some of the places we go, especially when we're riding in the deserts and so forth. But those are pretty much all the mods. Little stuff like, you know, I do the fastway pegs on my bikes. I like a really good grippy platform for my feet because I force my knees into my bike and I do a lot of steering with my bike. So my toes are pointed inward as I ride, and I like to stick them into those pegs that way. And so I'll do a lot of steering just with my knees alone, and I really dig that. That works out real well. I have no reason to switch the stock pipe. Again, don't need a ton of power. I can go be ultra competitive on this. My son races and I stay relatively close to him, and you know, a lot of the guys we ride with, they're not passing us or anything. So, and we're not leaving them terribly behind, but they're not really, you know, pushing us. We're not looking for additional power or anything like that. At least I'm not. So I haven't had any issues with this bike. We have had to put a motor in the XCW, and I know this isn't about KTM, but we have had to do that motor at 28 hours. We had a mass airflow, a mass air leak in that bike, and that was not because of the TPI. I know there's a lot of guys that are questioning the TPI, and some are kind of down on it, but that was because the manufacturer simply forgot to put a base gasket between the reed cage and the intake. And so we had the entire motor, we lost the entire motor on that bike. He was racing it aggressively, and so we lost the motor on that bike way sooner than we should have. And so when the dealer put it together, he recognized that they had just simply missed a gasket, and it was sucking quite a bit of air. So we got that fixed. We put a new reed cage on and so forth. So that bike, again, we haven't done much with the suspension on it. We just dial them in. You know, I'm real stickler for bike geometry, proper handlebars, proper you know, shifter lever angles, you know, and so I go through and I make sure all my stuff is dialed in to where I can reach everything. I can ride in an attack position with my elbows up and so forth. So I kind of set my bikes up that way, and then I just, you know, a lot of guys like to raise their bars. It's not something I personally agree with. I think you got to get them down as low as you can so it pulls you forward on the bike. You need to be in a neutral position, and the attack is what I call the attack position of a bike. And the handle, it starts with a proper geometry and the handlebar setup. Anyway, so maybe I'll make a vid on some of my geometry settings and what I do with my my shifter and my brake pedal and so forth, and kind of how I set those up. And then I set sag for my trail. I set sag pretty aggressive. I like a lot of sag in my bike because I'm using the entire stroke. I don't know, I'm not going out and hitting triples and doubles. Those are in my 20s. And so today I'm going to have a lot of whooped out sections, a lot of hard hits, you know, drops, things like that. And so I need my suspension to really be in the center of the stroke of that rear shock and in the front as well. So that's basically it. I thought I'd just kind of go over what I like about the bike. I don't really have anything I don't like about the bike. I think any day you can get on a dirt bike is a great day, no matter how it runs or how it performs. It's a great day as far as I'm concerned. You can see that I did have a bad day yesterday. Smacked a tree, and that was just me not getting on both brakes in time. Came off the trail and smacked a tree and broke that, and luckily didn't break anything else. So but anyway, I appreciate you taking the time. And man, if you've got any questions or even just comments, agreements, disagreements, I'm okay with it. I got broad shoulders, man. Be happy to happy to have some fun heated discussion, or just what works for you on your TE250i. And maybe you've got some setup ideas, and maybe somebody's played with their power valve and could give me a little bit of tips on that for this bike. One other thing I probably should mention is the power valve cover. I just pressure washed my bike, so I got all that oil off. The power valve cover, I'm going to pop that off and go ahead and seal that with some black RTV or something, because that leaks bad on both these 2020s. So we get a lot of oil out that, and so we're gonna fix those. But I think it's black RTV that most of the guys say that they're using. Anyway, appreciate it. Hey, do check out some of my ride videos. I don't monetize any of my videos, so I'm not in it for any of the money. I just love spreading the information and trying to make good vids. Hey, have a great day, guys.